This is the brand new Kia Syros and that's its twin, the Kia Sonet. Now they're both cut from the same cloth, they're both sub 4 meter compact SUVs and they even get the same set of petrol and diesel engines. But Kia tells us that these two are poles apart and they're meant for different sets of customers. Now, is that just plain corporate gibberish or they are telling us the truth? Well, we've got both the vehicles with us today, so let's find out. Let's start with the dimensions first. Now, both of these cars are sub 4 meters, so they measure in at about 3995 millimeters. But that's where the similarities end, because this is a larger vehicle. Now, first of all, it's taller. It has a tall boy design. It's also wider than the Sonet. Now, the other important thing to note here is that the wheelbase is also longer than the Sonet. So the Sonet is 2500 millimeters, but this one is 2550 millimeters. Now, again, like I said, in terms of size, they're both exactly the same. So how has Kia managed to do that? Well, you see, you notice both the cars here. The front overhang on this, it is much shorter compared to the Sonet. The Sonet has a more rakish windscreen, but on this, it is more upright. So you can see this has more of a van-like or MPV-like stance, but this is a proper SUV. So of course, it looks more aggressive than the Syros for sure. Now that's the primary difference between these two SUVs, because the platform is the same. This one is K1 and this one is K1 Evo, so it has some reinforcements and it uses hot stamping and some changes, but overall the structure is more or less the same. But of course they have managed to squeeze in more space because of that longer wheelbase and shorter overhangs. Now if you talk about the design, well, I think again it is very clear, because this is quirky in that sense. It feels like an MPV and it's not as butch as the Sonet, because the Sonet, I think, it's one of the best looking, I think, small cars on the market, not just a compact SUV. So I think the Sonet has that appeal, you know, it has that visual drama. So overall, you have to say that the Syros, it's basically something like a form following function. So because they wanted a larger cabin, so that's why it's made to look like an MPV. It has a tall boy design. But the Sonet, I think it's all about the form, the outside appearance, because this looks like a butch SUV. And if you park both these cars next to each other, of course, it's the Sonet that draws you towards it with its design. Now, when you step inside the Syros, you'll find that the interior is completely new. There's nothing that it shares with the Sonet or the Seltos. So the dashboard design is completely new. You've got this new steering wheel, which is a double D-cut. It looks quite good. It is very SUV-ish in that sense, because it's chunky and you have this very nicely laid out buttons over here. Of course, it has a lot of buttons. You have drive mode buttons, you have traction mode buttons, you have ADAS controls, everything is right here. So it is a bit of an overkill, but I think over time you are going to get used to it. You also get these paddle shifters in this top end automatic version. And of course, the party piece here is this touchscreen. Now this is a 30-inch touchscreen. So it's made up of 3 screens in total. So there is this 12.3-inch infotainment display. There is another 12.3-inch driver display. And in the middle, you have got this 5-inch display, which is for AC controls. Now, again, very cleverly done. And this features Kia's new infotainment system, new software. So you get wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. Of course, the screen is quite nice to use. It is very crisp, and overall, it feels like it is a generational upgrade. So that's really cool. And on top of that, you've also got these big chunky buttons right at the bottom. So it makes it very practical. Even for AC quick access buttons, you've got these buttons right there in the bottom half. So again, very practical, very easy to reach, and it makes the whole experience quite seamless. Although one thing that I'd want to criticize or complain about is the screen for the AC controls in the middle. It's kind of hidden behind the steering wheel. It's a bit of a blind spot, so when you're driving you have to keep on looking for that if you want to control that. And again, the feel is not tactile, so you have to look, and it feels very distracting. So I think this you could do without this screen for sure. But overall, the cabin is very nice. The fit and finish and quality levels are top notch, and even there are a lot of storage spaces. So in here you've got 2 cup holders. You've got this new gear lever. It looks quite nice. The interior theme is quite light as compared to the Sonet, which we'll jump in later. It has a dark theme, but this has a light grey theme, and Kia says that they're offering 4 interior color combinations with the Syros. So of course all are very light, and it gives the cabin a very airy feel. You've also got this wireless smartphone charger that is also very neatly integrated, and you've got big chunky buttons. You've also got 2 USB Type-C ports. Now, like I said, this is a newer generation, so you won't find the USB Type-A, and of course the connectivity is wireless, like I've already mentioned. Now, other great thing, as you can notice, is the headroom. So it feels more spacious than the Sonet for sure. There is a lot of headroom, even in terms of legroom and even in terms of width. I think I'm sitting more comfortably here, and the seats are also quite wide. Now, of course, at the front, the seat gets ventilation, and like I said, overall, the cabin feels much nicer and more spacious for sure. Other great thing is the sunroof. Now, this gets a full panoramic sunroof. It's a dual pane sunroof, so you have a lot of light coming in. The liner also looks quite thick, so you don't have sun coming in directly. So that's also a great addition. You know, it gives the car a more premium feel, and it definitely doesn't feel like a sub 4 meter compact SUV. Now, among other features, it also gets an electric parking brake, but in the Sonet you get a regular handbrake, so that's a plus. And of course, it has new features that includes level 2 ADAS. So in the Sonet you have ADAS, but that's level 1. So this has level 2 ADAS, so that means it has forward collision assistance, in the sense it also brakes. It also gets smart cruise control, stop and go, the same as the Seltos, more or less. The Seltos has 19 features, but this one has 16 features, but you get all the crucial ones. So that is a big difference. And of course, there are some other niceties, like from the key, which is this, you can also roll down all the windows up and down when you're outside the vehicle. So that's again a very premium feature, because you see it in more expensive cars. And also the key, it looks more premium and more rich compared to the Sonet. So these are some big changes, and of course, like I said, especially in terms of the interior feel, especially at the front in terms of features, the Sonet is already loaded to the gills, but this feels a step above. Now at the back seat, this is where the Syros has legs over the Sonet, literally, because as you can see, there is a lot more space, and that 50 millimeters extra in the wheelbase, that shows up here. So as you can see, the legroom is phenomenal. The headroom is also phenomenal. You've got acres of headroom over here, and I'm sitting here also quite comfortably. Even the under thigh support with these seats, it's quite nice. And you know what's even better? It also gets a reclining seat, and it can also slide forwards and backwards. So that is a segment first feature, that the seats can also be reclined and they can also move forward and backwards. So that's a great feature, and of course it feels more spacious. It actually feels like a bigger car. It's actually as spacious as a Creta or the Seltos, because the sense of space here, it is quite phenomenal. Now again, you get a lot of equipment. You've got these AC vents over here. You've also got this smart pure air purifier. You've got 2 USB Type-C ports. And even the middle passenger, well, they can sit here comfortably because the flow is very low and it doesn't have that prominent transmission tunnel. So again, the space management is really phenomenal. And yes, you've also got this armrest, but if you fold it, so you've got the seat for the third passenger, and they also get a 3-point seat belt at the back. So again, full marks to Kia, because they have just executed it perfectly. We've also got these Harman Kardon sound system. So again, it is the top end variant. The quality is quite nice, so it feels like a premium offering for sure. And again, you've got these sun blinds. They are manually operated, but they are quite nice, and they click with a high quality feel. Now the other thing is, look at this button right here. Well, this is for seat ventilation. So yes, this is a vehicle that comes with seat ventilation at the back, although they're not for the backrest, they're just on the bench. So that's one thing compared to the front seats, where you get ventilation both from the back and the scope, but in this it's only from the scope, not from the back. The other thing that I didn't find very comfortable or convenient is that the recline feature, it's right at the back. So if you have to recline the seat, you have to move your hand all the way back, and it's not very practical. I was expecting a latch somewhere around here on the side, but it's not there. But again, overall, the space, the features, the equipment, everything, well, it is made for a family van, and you can see that Kia has absolutely done their homework in this regard, and they've taken customer feedback, and compared to the Sonet, this is a much nicer and a more spacious place to be. Now you may not find all the bells and whistles of the Syros here, But I have to say that the Sonet's cabin, well, it is one of the most feature-loaded cabins in business, and it shows because it has got all the features that you need in your compact SUV. So again, it gets a big touch screen. You've got a digital driver display. It doesn't have that screen in the middle, but that doesn't matter because, like I said, I don't really care about that. The AC vents are large and big. You've also got these chunky buttons over here, so it is very practical in that sense. The steering wheel is typical Kia. I prefer this one because it has its classic taste, and it has all the buttons also very nicely integrated. It also gets paddle shifters for this top-end automatic version. And yes, it misses out on a couple of features like the handbrake. Like I mentioned, this has the same old mechanical linkage, but the Syros has the electric parking brake. The gear lever also, I think it looks much nicer. It is chunkier and it's great to use. The overall layout of the cabin, it's again very neat. The fit and finish levels, the quality, it is top notch like we saw in the Syros. But the plastics, well, there are a lot of hard plastics, and even on top it has got this hard plastic, but in the Syros you've got this soft top and it feels more premium for sure. Now the seats, of course, in terms of space, it feels a little cramped for sure, but the seats are as wide, and I think I have no complaints in that regard. Even in terms of legroom at the front, it feels perfectly fine. Of course, it misses out on a couple of niceties, like it has its same old single pane sunroof, so it is manually done, this liner, and again, it's maybe compared to the Syros, it doesn't feel as nice. But overall, if you're just looking for a sunroof, of course, it is there. It also gets a wireless charger, but what it doesn't get is the wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and I think that kind of bugs me because I've been using this car for a couple of months now, and every time you have to plug in your phone using this USB type A cable, so it feels a bit ancient compared to other cars. I think Kia needs to fix this in the Sonet as well, because most of the Kia models, they don't have wireless connectivity for your smartphone, and that's surprising because the lower variants of the Sonet, even the Seltos or even the Carens, they have wireless connectivity, but in the top end versions they don't have it. So I think Kia has to address this very soon, because it definitely feels like this car is a generation old. But overall, I think from the front, it has got all the features. You get seat ventilation as well. It has got 4-way electrically adjustable driver seat. That's the same with the Syros as well. So yes, it's quite evenly matched, but of course it doesn't have all the features. But in isolation, I don't think it misses out on anything. We've also got a Bose sound system in the top end variant again that has a Harman Kardon. The sound quality in both the systems, well, it's not really that different. It is quite good quality, but it's not a deal breaker if I have to tell you that. But overall, I think again this feels more compact. This feels a little tight. But in terms of features, equipment, quality, I think it's evenly matched. And if you can live without some of the features of the Syros, I think there's nothing wrong with the Sonet's interior. But that is until you jump to the back seat. Now this is where it starts to go downhill for the Sonet. And how? Because the back seat, well, the knee room, the leg room, it is quite tight. And you might think the seat has been pushed all the way back, but it's adjusted to my driving position. I'm just 5'9", so you can see even with someone of my height, it is quite tight. If you are 6 feet or even taller, well, you'll have no space at all here. So that's, a deal breaker for sure. And even though the seat is nice, you've got nice under thigh support, the headroom is also quite good. The windows are large, and you've got this blind as well. Overall, because of this black cabin and this tight leg room, it feels quite cramped for sure. And it feels cramped then, not just the Syros perhaps, but also compared to its main rivals. So I think that's the deal breaker for the Sonet. Of course, you get AC vents, you get this air purifier, you get USB Type-C ports. But overall, if you're a family man, well, I think this is going to be a deal breaker for you. Yes, in terms of luxury, in terms of comfort, in terms of premium feel, it has got everything, but it's missing out on the space that you or your children would be looking at the rear bench. So the boot space of the Syros, well, it varies between 390 liters to 465 liters. Now, that depends on the position of the seat of the second row. So if you move it to its foremost position, well, then you have, of course, a larger boot space. So that's when it has 465 liters. But if you move it all the way to the back, then it's 390 liters. So again, that's more than the Sonet's, which is 385 liters. But one thing that I'm noticing is this parcel tray. It is quite small. So once you have the seat moved forwards like this, you have this empty space which looks quite odd, and I think it's not very nice. So of course it would have been better if they could give a foldable sort of setup in this, because this, well, this is an eyesore of sorts. Now the Sonet's boot space is of course smaller than the Syros. This is 385 liters and the seats don't move backwards or forwards, so that's a fixed space that you've got. But at least it has got a proper parcel tray. So you get 3 engine options with the Sonet. The first is the 1.2 litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated petrol, and then you've got a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol and a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder diesel engine. Now this is the one that we are driving paired with an automatic transmission. Now the diesel and the turbo petrol versions, well, those are the engines that it shares with the Syros. Now again, coming back to the engine performance, today we are driving the diesel automatic, and it is one of my favorite powertrains this side of 20 lakh rupees. I think it's one of the best as well because it has got the seamless and effortless power delivery. It is quite refined for a diesel, and even the transmission, well, it complements this engine beautifully. So you've got that low end and mid-range kick of a diesel, and then it has also got the performance. It has that go, you know, it feels effortless everywhere. So if you're a fan of a diesel, well, I think this is the engine and transmission of choice because you'll absolutely love it. It's also quite efficient because I've been using this car for close to 3 months now, and I get around 15 kmpl very easily. Even though you're gunning it, you have got the performance, but at the same time, the efficiency doesn't drop. So that's the beauty of a diesel engine, and in the Sonet, well, it really shines through. Now, if there's one complaint that I have, it's that, of course, the engine is refined, but, it is quite loud. So, although you don't mind the noises because the performance, you kind of enjoy it, but especially during cold starts, it sounds very clattery. And especially in the morning, in Delhi, it was winter, and, you know, the first 10-15 minutes, the engine sounds quite agricultural, I'd have to say, because there is so much noise that filters into the cabin. So in that regard, it definitely feels like an old school diesel, but once it has warmed up and once you get going, so then it kind of drones out. But even then, I think it is a loud diesel engine, and especially when you go over 3,500 or 4,000 RPM, you can definitely feel the engine. In terms of performance, it doesn't lag, but it starts protesting and it doesn't like to be revved. Now, coming to the ride and handling balance of the Sonet, well, I have to say that, you know, it is slightly firm, especially the ride quality, and you can feel it going over bumps, especially at low speeds. It feels firm all the time, and it also rattles a lot, especially the parcel tray at the back. Well, it's not a very comfortable feeling, and you know, it's always there. So that rattle, that firm feeling, it feels a little stiff on even perfect roads. Now, in terms of handling, of course, it's a great handling car because it has stiff suspension. The steering is very nice. It has got that weight, and it doesn't feel vague at all. It has got nice heft to it, so you really enjoy driving it. Of course, it's not like a hatchback or a sedan, so you feel its weight, especially in the diesel version. So the nose, it's quite slow when you're turning in. The steering also, there is that understeer if you push it really hard, and it takes its own sweet time to turn. But again, by compact SUV standards, I think it's one of the best in the business, and I really like the steering feel for sure. But as you push it harder and harder, you can feel there is a lot of body roll, and it leans on its side, and the tires also are just on the verge of giving up. So you drive it leisurely, you use all that diesel torque, and that's the way to drive the Sonet. But I'm really curious to see how the Syros behaves in comparison to the Sonet, because yesterday I was chatting with Kia officials, and they were telling me that, you know, you'll find the difference in terms of ride quality and handling in the Syros, because they think this is a sporty handling car, and I'm not sure if it's a sporty handling SUV, but it sure is a sporty riding SUV because the ride quality is quite firm. So the engine options in the Syros are quite interesting because this one gets a 1-liter turbo, just like the Sonet, and the 1.5-liter turbo diesel. Again, same like the Sonet. So in the diesel, you get the same transmission options. So you get a 6-speed manual and you get a 6-speed torque converter, which is what we are driving today. But for the petrol versions, the turbo petrol, you get a manual transmission and a 7-speed DCT. But in the Sonet, you get an IMT, which is a clutchless manual transmission, and you also get a 7-speed DCT. Now, from what I understand, that's done so that they can price the entry-level version of the Syros lower, because IMT has some additional costs, so they probably want to have a lower sticker price for the base version. That's why they have introduced the manual version. That's what I think. But again, on this occasion, we are not driving the manual 1-liter or the DCT version of the petrol versions, but we are driving the diesel. Now, in terms of performance, in terms of how the drivability is, I think it's no different than the Sonet diesel, because it's again very seamless, effortless, and in here it's definitely more refined. I think that's one crucial difference that I can feel, because even at startup, when you crank the engine, it isn't as loud as it's in the Sonet. But again, you could say that the Sonet we have, it's slightly beat up. It has done over 14,000 kilometers. So yes, maybe that should also be factored in. I really love this engine, minimal turbo lag, and yeah, it's just a great diesel engine. In terms of efficiency also, I think it is going to match the Sonet, because the way this engine is, it is a diesel. And of course, in terms of efficiency, I'm not expecting it to be worse or even better than the Sonet. So I think it's sort of a tie between both these cars in terms of the engine and transmission, apart from the fact that this definitely feels more refined and there is less noise that filters into the cabin compared to the Sonet. Now, the difference between the two vehicles comes in the ride and handling department, because in terms of ride quality, this is definitely a softer car. It's not soft though. It has a firm edge for sure, but it's not as stiff as the Sonet. So they have tried to strike a great balance between ride and handling, because in terms of ride quality, I can definitely feel that it is more absorbent, and when you go over bumps and when you go over speed breakers, you can definitely feel that there is not that much of movement that you get in the Sonet, especially at the back. So this feels more absorbent, and it's more supple also in that regard, and I think it's also quieter than the Sonet suspension. But again, I'd again say the same thing. The Sonet is slightly old, and surprisingly, the Sonet has smaller wheels. This has bigger wheels, but still the ride quality on this car, well, it is quite nice. But is it the most comfortable sub 4 meter SUV? Well, I don't think so, because from what I remember, the Brezza, the Maruti Suzuki Brezza, it has better ride quality. It feels more absorbent. Handling, it's quite good. The steering, it's lighter at low speeds, but as the speed rises, it has the same sort of heft that you get from the Sonet. But at low speeds, at parking speed, it's lighter for sure. So I think again, they've tried to kind of modify it for the kind of usage it's meant for family people, for people who want practicality and effortless driving and space and all that. But at the same time, I think they've not strayed too far from the Sonet philosophy. So it is a quite great ride and handling balance. So I think I'm really surprised by the ride and handling balance of the Syros, because of course it feels softer than the Sonet, but there are no real trade-offs in terms of handling. So as it turns out, the Syros and the Sonet are poles apart indeed. On the surface, yes, they might be compact SUVs, but when you drive these cars, when you experience these cars, you'll come to know that they are different from each other. Now, of course, there's no clear winner here, because both these cars will appeal to different audiences. Because the Syros, of course, it is a more practical family SUV. It has got that space, it has a lot more features, and it's also more comfortable. But the Sonet, well, although it feels a generation old compared to the Syros, especially when you're inside the car, but it still holds its own, because it is the more SUV of the two. It has got that butch look, and it has also got all the features. It's evenly matched. Of course, it's not as great as the Syros, but the Sonet, it has everything that you want from your SUV. Now, in the end, it all boils down to the pricing, and of course, there is a bit of difference between these two, because the Sonet, like I said in the beginning, it has that naturally aspirated engine, so the entry level price for the Sonet is lower than the Syros. But when you compare the 1-liter turbo and the diesel versions, they are quite evenly matched. But yeah, the Syros offers you more space. So if you are a family man, if you care more about your family, more about the comfort or the space, the Syros is the one to go for. But if you just want a compact SUV for yourself to drive, I think the Sonet is still your go-to option.